Hello, everyone, and hopefully welcome back to You Got It, another episode of Mondays with Mundy. And you're looking at him, Jim Mundy, the historian for the Union League Legacy Foundation. So this video is being broadcast on Monday, February the 15th. And in 3 days' time, a golf tournament, and don't roll your eyes at me, golf's not that bad. So a golf tournament will take place in Los Angeles at a club called Riviera Club. And I mention this because the Riviera Club was actually designed by a Union League member. So who would have thought that you could connect golf and oh no, of course we all know that because we have 2 golf courses. But who would have thought that in the early 20th century, a Union League member was one of the great golf architects in America? But he was more though, which is why we're going to talk about the gentleman. All right, so I'm going to do my ubiquitous and proverbial PowerPoint. So let me get this thing to share screen. I do that, we do this, and then I've got to wait for that to happen up there, and then we do that. Okay, we got it. All right. Clever, isn't it? Green thumbs and greens. All we need is gin. We might predict the 3rd G. Well, that'll be a different episode. So let's get started. All right, this is the gentleman about whom we will be talking for the next few minutes, George Clifford Thomas Jr. As you can see, he was born in Philadelphia, October the 3rd of 1873, into a very wealthy family. His father, George Thomas Sr., was an incredibly successful and wealthy banker. He first started in banking during the Civil War for the J. Cook and Company, which, as we've heard in previous episodes, practically single-handedly, it seemed, with other Philadelphia banks, financed the Civil War. And after J. Cook and Company, he went to work for the Drexel banking family. So Anthony J. Drexel, who was a founding member of the Union League. And after A.J. Drexel died in 1893, the Drexel firm became known as the Morgan Drexel Banking Company, and he went to work for them. So he kept working for banks until he died in he retired a little earlier, but he died in 1909. Now, George Sr. joined the League in 1866 and died a member in 1909. So young George then comes along into a very wealthy upper-class family, and we'll get into a story. Okay, and by the way, the green thumbs part of the story, you can see that this portrait, which is a very modern portrait of Mr. Thomas, includes roses, because George Thomas would become one of the great rose experts in America at the same time. So let's get going. So this is young Mr. Thomas at the age of 12 in 1886, approximately 12, could have been 13. Went to school at the Episcopal Academy when it was located in Center City. And he then went to the University of Pennsylvania, where he graduated in 1894. Didn't really need to work, and he really didn't work. He worked for his father intermittently at the Morgan Drexel Banking Company, but never did it full time because he had other interests, which was really kind of neat, and that's what we're here to talk about. In 1897, still a young man, he joined the Union League, and he would stay a member of the League for his entire life until he died in 1932. So quite a character. So it's 1897, and 3 years later, he takes a leap into a whole new world. And what is it? Roses. He buys 50 roses from a Philadelphia rose grower and expert named Dr. Robert Huey, H-U-E-Y. And Dr. Huey was a dentist, had an office around 15th and Spruce. But he also had a little garden, if you will, way down in South Philadelphia, in an area called the Neck, towards Hog Island, which is where he was growing those roses. And this is actually a photograph of Dr. Huey's rose garden. You can tell that's not 15th and Spruce, right? So in Center City. And this is a 1914 photograph, but it's contemporary. But it gives you an idea of what we're talking about in terms of rose gardening. Also, it's in color from 1914, which is pretty neat. So Dr. Huey sold George these 50 roses and said, if you're going to do it all the way, get involved and grow them right. And that's what George did. Now, at this point, George is living on his parents' estate called Bloomfield Farm. Bloomfield Farm was on Germantown Pike, or Germantown Avenue, then Germantown Pike, between roughly Northwestern Avenue and Thomas Road, which is, so if you're going out Germantown Avenue, going west, it'll be on the right-hand side. Just so Northwestern Avenue is the Philadelphia-Montgomery County border, to give you some idea. Okay, so that's where he was growing his roses and things like that. And it's also, though, George, besides being a gardener now, was also very much a golfer, because the family belonged to Philadelphia Cricket Club in Chestnut Hill, which then had an 18-hole course. Now it's a 9-hole course called the St. Martin's course. And George was a darn good golfer. He was a 2-handicapper. He had won at least 2 club championships. So he was a pretty active but very accomplished young man, even at this age. So he's 27, and he's 30 years. No, what is he? He's 27 years old at this point. So 1900, he's doing golfing and he's doing gardening. All right, but these are still more avocations than anything else. And then in 1901, he gets married, and he marries Edna Harrison Ridge, and they would have 2 children. George Clifford Thomas III, who you see here in his mother's arms, and then the daughter Josephine Moorhead. And they would be the 2 children that they had. So, and this is the Thomas family. Alrighty. So now in the meantime, getting back to golf, there were a number of golfers who wanted to form a club, and it would eventually be known as the Riviera Country Club, but they had lost their ground and they wanted new ground. And so they approached the Thomas family asking if they could use their farm, Bloomfield Farm. And the family said, sure, with one condition. You have to let George design the course. There you go. So the family house itself, you can kind of make it out. It's in the center of the image, but towards the bottom, okay, between the trees there. All right, you can see the shape of the house and the dormers and things like that. But this is the course that George designed. So already he's getting into the field of golf course architecture. So, and of course, today we think of this as the White Marsh Valley Country Club, and it's still there and going strong. And the course is a wonderful course, from everything I've been told. So in the meantime, then where did the Thomases go? Well, they go to a new house called Edge Hill on Germantown Avenue, but inside the city limits, so a little east of the old Bloomfield farm. And this is the house, I believe, that was left on the estate. It's now part of a private school called the Norwood Bonbon Academy, which is a private Catholic elementary school, all right, on Germantown Avenue. So it was here then that George really seriously went into the rose gardening business, if you will. And this is where he was developing his line of Bloomfield roses. And they would become very famous throughout the entire country, if not the world, actually. So, and here we have George in World War I, because that's the next big thing to happen, right? So in 1917, he joins the Army Air Force, which is what it was. He becomes the captain of the 96th Aero Squadron. He would crash his plane 3 times and survive each crash. And of course, people called him very lucky, and he said, no, it was miraculous. It wasn't luck. It was a miracle. But it never deterred him from flying. And he actually had a private plane the rest of his life, and he would use it when he moved to California to scope out, if you will, golf courses. So, all right. So that's Captain George Thomas. And from there on, the rest of his life, he would be known as Captain Thomas. All right, now back to roses. Between 1914 and 1932, when he died, he would publish 2 books on roses, and write 18 articles in the American Annual Rose Review. So he was an accomplished expert in rose gardening and rose propagation, hybridizing, and things like that. And actually, it was the hybridizing that really made him famous, because he created a rootstock that he named after Dr. Robert Huey. And that rootstock is to this day the most widely used rootstock in propagating roses, as I understand it. So George Thomas is still with us today. So in 1914, he published the Practical Book of Outdoor Rose Growing. And 10 years later, 1924, Roses for All American Climates, right? The difference being that between 1914 and 1924, he would move to California with his family. But let's stick with roses. So this is called the Bloomfield Abundance. Give you some idea of what he was doing. Beautiful rose. Think of the roses that we saw in his portrait earlier, right? This is a rose that he named after his mother, Mrs. George C. Thomas. It's, as you can see, a yellow climbing rose, and it was photographed by George Thomas himself. So he was an accomplished man in many different fields. And then here is the house in California. So they moved out there in 1919. They lived at 1012 Crescent Drive in Beverly Hills. And keep in mind, Beverly Hills, like a lot of that part of Los Angeles, is basically ridges and valleys in between and whatnot. So here we have the backyard, if you will, the house terraced, so he could grow his roses. And eventually he would have over 1,200 rose plants growing in his yard there. And so you can see that he's taking Dr. Yu's advice, and he's going into the growing business seriously. Now, here we have Captain Thomas on the left-hand side in his garden on Crescent Drive in Beverly Hills. There we have him on the right-hand side, dressed to play golf, because he never gave up the golf aspect. So I think this is a pretty clever segue, right? Because now we're going into golf. I hope you enjoyed that. All right. And this is what he did. This is considered his crowning achievement. That is debatable within the golfing world because golfers can't agree on everything. But nonetheless, this is what we know today of as Riviera Country Club. Just a few miles from his house. Actually, when George moved to Los Angeles, he joined the Los Angeles Country Club, which was literally a mile away from his house along Wilshire Boulevard. But he was, in, let's see, 1922 thereabouts, and a wealthy oil baron in California named Alexander Bell purchased 400 acres and wanted to create a country club, which was first known as the Los Angeles Athletic Club. And that would evolve into Riviera. And so in 1926, George Thomas received the commission to make this golf course. And that is what it looked like when it was finished. And you can see the clubhouse in the upper left-hand corner. Now, and looking at this, you can see all those white areas, those are bunkers. And Thomas would become very famous for his use of bunkering as a defensive tool in shot making on a golf course. But you can see they're not neat and clean and rounded the way we see a lot of them today. They're almost very rugged and jagged in some ways. And that became his trademark. All right, so this is in the upper right-hand corner. You can see the Los Angeles Athletic Club sign there. And here you get an idea of just how hilly it was in that part of Beverly Hills. So the ground was part of what we call the Santa Monica Canyon. And you can see the effects of the canyon right there. So hilly as it was. And this is another view of the course under construction. And you can see that they are using non-mechanized means of moving earth. The two horses were the only two non-mechanical features of the course development, and their names are Tom and Jerry, and I couldn't make that up if I tried. So, but here we have Captain Thomas sitting in the tractor himself, right? And to the right of him is Bill Bell, and Bill Bell was his partner in many ways and on many of these golf courses. And Bill Bell was already a golf superintendent, so he knew golf course management. Therefore he knew design. And Bill Bell would help him in the design of Riviera and many of his other clubs as well. So you can see, Thomas wasn't afraid to get down and dirty, so to speak. All right. Thomas and Bell, and that is them, Thomas in the center, Bell on the left-hand side, invited Dr. Alistair Mackenzie, then one of the most respected and renowned golf architects in the world, to come and take a look at what they were doing in Riviera. Mackenzie thought he was being invited to be hired, but he was just being invited for advice, which he still gave them. So, but you can see this, the golfing circles in which Captain Thomas moved. All right, and here we have the Riviera Clubhouse as it looked when it was finished or completed in 1929. The course itself was open in 1927. The clubhouse in 1929, and you're looking across the ninth hole, and on the left hand along a frame you can see what's there of the 18th green. But let's take a look what it looks like today. And this is it today. So we're looking at the ninth green straight ahead of us, and then up the hill, the clubhouse, and to the left, behind those three trees is the 18th green, known as the amphitheater, because you can see how the shape of the green is like this bowl behind it. All right. So that's that. All right. And this is the 18th hole, and it's one of the great finishing holes in golf because it's a hard hole. I mean, it's a hard course. Actually, Riviera right now in the biannual ranking of American golf courses is ranked number 19, all right, which is pretty darn good, all right. And that's the 18th green. Just you can see the pin just over the bunker there, all right. Now, Thomas would go on to design, beginning in 1900, he designed his first course in Marion, Massachusetts. That still exists as a 9-hole public course. 1911, he designed Spring Lake Golf Club in Spring Lake, New Jersey. And then it was in 1920, after he had moved to Los Angeles, that he started designing more golf courses, starting with Las Cumbres. He did Red Hill Country Club. He did some public courses in LA and themselves. He did the Los Angeles Country Club, which he joined, and we almost as soon as he moved out there, and he would eventually design the North Course, which is today considered the 23rd best club in America. Speaking of LA Country Club, here it is. All right. That is the first hole, the first green. And again, you can see how the bunkering is kind of informal and rugged, if you will. But that is Los Angeles right behind them. So it's amazing that you can get these views of the city itself from the golf course. And this is the fourth hole at Los Angeles Country Club. You'd think you're in Northern California instead of LA, but it's just spectacular. And again, you can see the bunkering. And this is the ninth. And you can see the clubhouse up on the right-hand side, but in the left-hand background, you can see an office building. So Thomas would go on. He developed, what else did he do? He did the Ojai Valley Country Club, which is now the Ojai Valley Spa and Resort, but the golf course is still there. And that was probably close to the last one he did. Oh, he also did the golf course at Sanford University. I think that was his last official golf course. So in the meantime, the captain is flying his planes. He was a yachtsman. He had a boat. And his wife was as equally athletic as he was in many ways. I mean, she was a skilled horsewoman. She shot, and she was a markswoman, and she was also a yachtswoman as well. So she was a good swimmer. So they were a really good pair. So then in 1927, Captain Thomas writes his book on golf architecture. You can see on the left-hand side what the dust jacket looked like, and on the right-hand side without the dust jacket, and that is actually the Unileague's copy, because the Unileague library has copies of all of George Thomas's books. We have a wonderful collection of books authored by League members, and Thomas is in there, as you can see. And then 5 years later, Captain Thomas, while at home, would have a sudden heart attack and die. So this is his grave at Laurel Hill Cemetery, and that is Captain Thomas on the right-hand side. So the body was brought back to Philadelphia. There was a service at St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Germantown, and he was buried in the family plot at Laurel Hill, and you can go there and see them today. So and actually, there were memorial services in both Los Angeles and Palm Beach simultaneously, and then of course there were other services in probably Washington, Boston, Chicago, and places like that. So because when he died, I mean, he was considered one of the premier golf course architects and experts in growing roses in this country. So who would have thought a Union League member could have gone, greens and, green thumbs and greens, right? I think it's an amazing story. It really is. So I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope that wasn't too painful, at least part the golf part. Roses are always fun, but maybe not the golfing. But if you get a chance, take a look at the golf tournament this coming weekend, and you'll get an idea of just exactly how good a golf course architect Captain Thomas really was. So, all right. Well, that wraps up another episode. We're done. Another week to the next one. So in between, everybody stay safe, stay well, stay healthy, and enjoy the week in between. So thanks for watching. Thanks to the Legacy Foundation for sponsoring these videos. I hope you're having as much fun watching them as I am making them. So until next week, adios. Stay well. Bye.